called out to him. Word of God, word of life.
Thanks be to God.
Grace, mercy, and peace be unto you from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. So, we are in our third week of hearing about people of faith. The first week we heard about Abraham and how he was called by God to be a blessing. Actually, he was called so that God could bless him so that he could be a blessing to someone else. Last week, if you saw the Facebook posting and the little sermonette that was on there, we heard about Moses and the man of faith that he was and how he helped the people of Israel leave their time of slavery in Egypt. Today, we hear about Gideon. And Gideon is someone that you may or may not have heard of. It's not a person that we preach a whole lot about. Because he is not necessarily part of the regular lectionary of the 3 years that we follow. So it's an exciting time that we can talk about Gideon. But his time in terms of what we are looking at is really not all that special because his life follows the lives of so many other figures in the Bible. But we lift him up today as an example of how God uses people when they don't feel like they're good enough. And if you remember the words that we just said in our confession, we're saying those very same words today. We said, we confess that we have not allowed your grace to set us free. We fear that we are not good enough. You ever feel that way? That you're not good enough? For whatever reason, good enough to do whatever you feel in your life. You may not feel like you're good enough today for whatever reason. You may not feel like you're good enough to be married to the person that you're married to. Or you may not feel good enough to be in the school that you're in. Or you may not feel good enough to be a parent. Or feel good enough to be a child. We make up excuses or reasons why we feel we're not good enough to do things. Gideon was very much like that. And see if this sounds like you. He came from a lousy family background. He came from a lousy family background. Now, hopefully, that's not anyone in here. But you know what? The likelihood of that being the case is larger than you realize. I've said before that there is dysfunctionality in every single family. There are things that go on in people's lives that we don't want others to know just because they'll judge us for what our family life is. Every family is supposed to be perfect. Every family is supposed to be the kind that would be up on a Norman Rockwell painting. Now, if you're too young to know who Norman Rockwell was, ask some of the older folks in the room. But, I heard that. The question then is, do you feel crippled from your childhood or by your childhood? Do you feel like you're having trouble moving on from the patterns that you learned from your home of origin? If I were to answer that, I would say, at times, yeah. I didn't grow up in the best childhoods because I really was a nerd or a dork or whatever you might want to call it. I was not one of those guys that were very athletic. I wasn't one of those guys that went out and hunted or worked on cars or anything like that. I was into theater. I was into music. I was into, well, I liked sports, but I wasn't really athletic. And so I really was not the kind of kid that really most would think would be the right kind of childhood. And so as a result, my family or my childhood was not the best for me. And then the next question is, if that is like you, then this message is for you. Gideon had poor self-esteem. You have issues with feeling worthy. Do you compare yourself to others and always come up short? A wise person once in the last few weeks turned me on to a quote from Teddy Roosevelt, a very wise person. And that person said, Teddy Roosevelt was quoted as saying, "Comparison is the thief of joy." Comparison is the thief of joy. Are you robbing yourself of joyful living because you're comparing your life to others? Or are you comparing yourself to someone else? That person is better than I am in this case. That boy is stronger than I am. That girl is faster than I am. That boy is smarter than I am in class. That coworker makes more money than I do. That coworker is liked by my boss more than I'm liked. And so on and so forth. Do you feel like you come up short? Well, then this message is for you. Gideon lived in fear of bullies. Are you the kind of person that hides? Do you deal with fear or anxiety in regards to a situation or a person that keeps you closed or cocooned or shut down? I know what that's like. Being bullied is no fun. And it happens even when you're an adult, when you're a teenager. Being bullied means that someone else is trying to control you by making you feel worse about yourself so that they can feel better about their own life. Being bullied really is about the other person. It's not about you. But Gideon lived in fear of bullies. Is that you? Well, then this message is about you and is for you. Are you a chronic worrier? I don't think anybody in here worries. I don't see any worry marks. I don't see any lines on the faces, so I don't think anybody in here worries, right? Nobody worries about bills. Nobody worries about getting the lawn mown. Nobody worries about grades. Nobody worries about whether their kids are going to come home after having a long night with their friends. Nobody worries at all. But Gideon was a chronic worrier. He worried all the time. And if that's the case, then this message is for you. And finally, Gideon caved into peer pressure. You live your life so that other people will approve of you? Are you worried about what your family will think if you date the wrong person? Or if you have friends that are outside your religion? Are you afraid of what your parents might think in any aspect? Are you afraid of what your neighbors will think if you put up the wrong political sign? Are you afraid of what your parents will say? And you fill in the blank. If you're afraid of what other people think of you, and I can raise my hand at times, it's tough because you're letting someone else's opinion rule your life. So let's go through it really quickly again. Lousy family background, poor self-esteem, fear of bullies, chronic worrier, peer pressure. Any of those things come into your life. Well, then God comes to you and says, I am going to use you. I'm going to pluck you out of your obscurity. I'm going to use you in ways that you don't even realize. And you can come back and say, well, God, I can't because I'm not good enough. Or did you see how I did on my last test? Did you see how I did on my last job performance? Did you see or did you hear what those people said about me? I'm not good enough. Moses was one of those people that said that. He said, God, how am I supposed to go to the Egyptians and tell them to let your people go? I stutter. I have a speech impediment. God said, I'm going to use you. If God sees you and you're too short, or you're too tall, or you're too fat, or you're too thin, or you don't have the right IQ, or you don't have the right haircut, or you have tattoos, or your body just is not the way it used to be, and it can't move as fast. If your eyes are not where they used to be, you can't see as well. If your hearing is not what it used to be, and you end up asking people to repeat themselves, if your memory is not the way that it used to be, how is God supposed to use you? God always finds a way. What if you're too young? What if you're too old? What if you don't have kids? What if you have too many kids? What if you don't drive the right car? What if you sit on that side versus this side of the church? You know, there are favorite places for God to look, right? Notice how I didn't put these two always on the side. What if you don't rule or don't vote and root for the Colts? God will strike you down. What if your favorite color isn't blue? You see what I'm getting at? God will use you no matter what. God has a place for you in his kingdom and has a way for you to make a difference in this world, no matter what you feel you have to offer or can't offer. You have the ability to change people's lives. You have the ability to make a difference in someone's life. Your background is not going to make a difference to God. Your self-esteem certainly is not going to make a difference. Bullies will not be able to tear you away from God. If you worry too much, then maybe you are listening to the wrong voice. But God can certainly use you. And if you give it to peer pressure a little bit too much, God still is going to use you. You are worthy enough to strike down the altars of the enemies of God. You have the ability to counter the evil in this world. You have the ability, no matter who you are, what your last name may be, to stand up for those who don't have a voice. You have the ability to counteract the bullies in this world. You have the ability, with everything that you are and with everything that you can say, to say something positive in the life of someone else. You have the ability to change this world because God is with you. If God calls you to it, God will get you through it. If God calls you to it, God will see that you have the instruments to accomplish it. If God calls you to it, God gives you the power to succeed. No matter what. No matter whether you feel that you are worthy enough. God roots for the underdog. We see that in the Old Testament, we certainly see it in the New Testament. God roots for those people who feel burdened by this world. And if that's you today, know that you are loved. If you feel like your family is holding you back, know that you are loved. If you're worrying too much, know that you are loved. If you're being bullied, if your self-esteem is way too much for you to handle, know that you are loved. Gideon, myself, Abraham, Moses, David, Lori, Harold, everyone in here. You are enough. And you're worthy of God's love. So as you continue reading in the Bible, as you continue to go through doors that God has waiting for you. See what God has in store for your life. These are examples of people of faith, not people of perfection. God does not want you to be perfect in order for you to be loved. God does not want you to be perfect in order for you to be used. God does not expect you to have it all together before God sends you out into this world. If that were the case, none of us would have that chance. But God, where God sends you, God will go with you. That's the beauty of the gospel. That's the beauty of God's love. And so, my friends, today, if you're feeling unworthy, if you're feeling like you just don't have what it takes, listen to these words again that we heard in our first prayer. You have always used unexpected people to accomplish your purposes. Empower us to achieve the kingdom tasks you set for us. Transform us through faith in you that as we live by your word. You, my friends, are the unexpected people that God will use today. Be excited and see where God is leading you.